Awesome.
Wonderful. I'm so glad you were able to jump on today. I was glad to see another family coming. So today I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to do a little bit of a PowerPoint presentation based on Montessori in the home, room by room. I'll go ahead and work through some of these materials, and then if we have any questions, we can answer those at the end.
Awesome. Sounds great. I just want to check if you can hear me okay. Is my microphone working?
It is. I can hear you. Thank you very much for checking.
Okay, thank you.
Just gonna give me. Can't seem to get my screen shared here. There we go. Here we are. All right, now we're ready. I think all the time I spent teaching on Zoom, I'd be more prepared. All right, so our parent education class today, this is a rescheduled course that I was offering back in October. So today is a makeup date, and we're going to be talking about Montessori at your home. We're going to start today by talking about what a Montessori styled space would look like. Those of you that might have a background in Montessori will be familiar with some of these terms, but this also might be new information. So when we're looking at a Montessori style space, our goal is to be intentional. So we want to make sure that we are thinking about what our children need when we're arranging the space. I have mentioned in parent-child class that might include considering what the child's interests are in, looking at the child's schemas. We talked a few weeks ago about schemas of early childhood development and the interests that children have and arranging their space with the child's needs in mind. Of course, we want to remember that less is more. The recommendation I give is probably no more than the works you see available here in this photo. Making sure when we're asking our students to direct their own learning and their own experiences, we want to make sure we're not overwhelmed by the space. Sometimes that can happen in a classroom space. I think we observed that, Jeremy, a few days ago when you guys came to visit. There was a lot of choices. And for when we're first introducing that willingness for the children to direct their own learning, we want to make sure that we're not overwhelming them or intimidating them with too many choices. The shelf you see there prepared in the home space wouldn't include much more than I typically say between 5 to 8 materials. We want to make sure that we're creating a yes space. I've said that before in the classroom, that anything that's available in the classroom should be available for students to touch and feel and explore with. If you have an example would be a plant. If there's a plant that you don't want this children digging in and out of the dirt, then it shouldn't be in that environment. We want to make sure that we're creating a prepared space that is a yes space. There is some freedom within limits. If you're looking at the picture here on the slide, that is a yes space. The students are free to use any of the materials available there. But if the child were to start climbing on the shelf, that obviously would be a safety problem. So we'd have to put a limit there where there is, of course, no climbing on the furniture. I like to use a feet stay on the floor sort of policy. So while we are preparing yes spaces, it's important to keep in mind that that's within reason as far as safety, not only for your child, but for the children around them. Some tips for designing a Montessori style space at home. Of course, you want to make sure that everything is child sized. There's a variety of web-based companies that you can purchase those materials from. Even Amazon has a wide selection of baby and child size materials. So we want to make sure that we're preparing the space in a size that's designed for young children. We do want to make sure our space is beautiful and appealing to the eye. Again, we're asking the students to make their own choices, and the way we can best encourage them to make those choices is by offering them a space that is beautiful, prepared, but simple, not overwhelming. It's also important that the materials we're putting out are attractive. Sometimes that can be in the storage containers that we're putting them in. Sometimes that can be by using different color-coded systems. For some Montessori materials, if you're looking at doing some cleaning procedures, you can make sure that the objects that you're using all match, are all of the same color. Things like that will be appealing to the eye and more attractive to the child, so they're more likely to go and choose it then on their own. We want to make sure that the spaces we're designing encourage independence in our children. We want to make sure that we are only offering assistance when necessary. We want to make sure that we're encouraging the space to allow them to grow and explore freely and safely, and only intervening when necessary. Of course, it's important that when you're setting up this environment, as I mentioned before, that you're doing it with your child in mind, not only their interests and ability levels, but also their developmental level. What can they reach for? How steady are they when walking from place to place? Do I need to have availability for gross motor development and control? Do I need to offer opportunities like a cart or a push broom to work on more gross motor and walking development? So keeping your child in mind when you're setting up the space. It's also important to remember a rule of thumb that I'm sure we all heard as young children, and something that I still say now, is a place for everything and everything in its place. A Montessori environment that's prepared. It's important that children remember and recognize that there is a home for every material. In order to find it again later, they need to recognize that it's going to be found in the same place every time. We encourage our children to replace our materials back on the shelf in the same place every time. You'll hear me do that in the classroom. Oh, I don't think that's where you found that. Let's make sure we put it back in its place. And the reason we do that is so after repeated experiences, the children can come back and find those materials again when they would want to increase their learning, and they don't have to search for them. They know exactly where those materials are going to be found. Again, you want to keep a limited number of activities, not to overwhelm your children, so they can direct their own learning. 5 to 8 activities is usually appropriate for young children and toddlers. What you can do if you already have a space prepared for your children, and there are
for the home.
more activities than that, is you can store some of the materials or toys that you have right now and rotate those out. That's almost like getting new toys every few weeks, and then you don't feel the pressure of having to feel like you need to shop or go buy additional materials when you're storing the materials that you already have and just rotating them out after your children have mastered the materials out or are showing a lack of interest. Setting up the space with a child in mind and seeing this through the space through their eyes. If you're setting up a space for an infant, you might want to lay on the floor. You might want to turn around and see what is going to be in their eye line as you're setting up that space. You want to get low on the floor. You want to reach for things in your toddler space. Make sure that things aren't out of reach, making sure that they can move through the space independently and safely. And of course, as I've said many times before, we always want to observe. After we've designed a Montessori style space and allowed our children to begin exploring in the space, it's important that we observe and see what's working and what's not. Make sure that we are adjusting things and making sure that we're meeting each child where they are. So now we're going to start talking about what Montessori in your home can look like room by room. The first room we're going to start with is the entrance to your home. We want to make sure that we're starting children off with independence and cooperation from in every aspect of the home. So that includes where we arrive and where we leave. You want to make sure that you have low hooks available for children to hang their coats and sweaters and any other materials, snow pants, things like that, unassisted. It's important that you have a basket or a shelf for shoes to go on. In our prepared environment, the students have access to everything in the environment. A lot of Montessori schools will use a shoeless policy in their classroom strictly for cleanliness and germs because the students are actively moving through the entire space. So a lot of Montessori schools do encourage their students to remove their shoes upon entrance and place them in a basket or a shelf. So if that's something you'd like to encourage at home, you'll see many similarities in Montessori classrooms for that. We want to provide our children with a low mirror so they can check their appearance and meet the needs of their personal and physical hygiene there. We also want to offer them a low chair or a bench so they can begin to remove and apply their shoes unassisted. Moving into the living room area for our youngest learners, our babies and infants, we want to make sure that we're giving them a movement area. You want to make sure to have some sort of movement mat that they can lay on, a low mirror or a low chair or bench. For toddlers, a lot of those similarities are going to apply. Of course, it is a functional space for adults and children. So when you're looking at your living room, we want to make sure that not only can the children function in that space, but you as adults can as well. So along with the adult type furniture that we would expect to see in any sort of living room space. You also want to make sure you're providing a space for your infant or toddler by giving them an area where they have low shelves, where they have a small table or chair, or some floor mats where if they would like to do work or work on a material in the living room space, they have a delineated area for that. If you've attended my parent-child class, you know that I've asked you to come with a rug or a towel, and that's for that same purpose. A place for everything and everything in its place, and that includes the materials that we are currently working on. By giving the child a floor mat or a working space, it lets them utilize one material at a time. It lets them keep that material in one central location, and it lets them understand that that material is theirs for the time being, and they're allowed to work on it for as extended period of time as they would like. When we're looking at the kitchen, we're looking at giving each child an eating area, somewhere where they can eat independently, where they can also pull out the utensils and materials that they would need for a food situation, putting those in a low cupboard or drawer so they're able to pull out their own cup, pull out their own plate, pull out any table settings if they'd like to work on that aspect of practical life at home. You may also want to provide your infant with a basket of kitchen items that they can explore to begin some of those early introductions. For our toddlers, we are going to want to have a low shelf available for them for those same reasons, so they can get their own cup, their own tables, their own table setting, things like that. Those items do need to be child-sized, a child-sized cup, a child-sized plate, child-sized eating utensils. It's important the child has a step ladder or a learning tower that they can use to stand on or move around the space, maybe wash their hands at the sink in a way that's as independent as possible. There are a variety of websites that can offer more information about that stepladder or learning tower. We also have them available at the garden, so you can absolutely speak with one of our toddler teachers if you need a reference for somewhere to get a material like that. It's also important that the children not only can prepare the space they're going to eat in, but also that they can clean the space they've been eating in afterwards. So it's important to offer them child-sized cleaning materials. In the kitchen, that might look like a hand broom or a hand duster, whereas they're eating their snack or eating their food, they can then use that for a crumbing experience, sweeping up after themselves. You might want to provide them with a small child-sized mop that they can practice the presentation for any type of spillage that might happen during eating. You want to make sure that your children have access to a water source so they can fill their own cups, so they can have access to possibly washing their own dishes as part of those cleaning experiences before and after an eating time. It's important that they have easy to open containers. They might also enjoy experiences that allow them to work more with measuring cups and spoons in a controlled environment. A spray bottle and a squeegee can be great for cleaning and polishing in the kitchen area, and even a small watering can for plant care and that we would see coming out of the kitchen space and that water source. I have a link here that will give a little bit more information from a organization known as Our Montessori Life, our child sites history. When I share this recording on the parent portal, I will try to attach the links I have available as well, and then you can read those on your own if you are interested in more information. Here's a little bit of an image of what a Montessori prepared kitchen could look like. Here we have the water source that we spoke of. This is what this family has decided to use is a pitcher or a jug. So you don't have to have plumbing to make a space like this work. It's really just adapting the space to meet your particular needs. We'll go on to the next slide. Okay, so the next slide we're looking at is going to be a Montessori style bedroom space. Now, the first disclaimer on that is a Montessori prepared bedroom must be completely child proof. If your children are going to be leaving their bed space unassisted, i.e. they will not be in a crib, they will be using what we refer to as a floor mattress as a bed space. They will then be leaving the bed space. Say they wake up in the morning fairly early and mom and dad are not entering the bedroom space yet. They will be encouraged to leave that floor mattress, that bed, and begin to explore the environment on their own. That is done even with our youngest children. So when I state that the area in the bedroom must be completely childproof, it absolutely is pertinent for our children to stay safe and be able to begin those experiences unassisted. In that sleeping area, you're going to want to have a small shelf with a few materials out. So if the child does awake early, is struggling to self-soothe and possibly go to sleep, that they can choose materials that are pre-prepared and safe for them. A book basket is a good idea. A full-length mirror can encourage a lot of interaction with the infant and some self-reflection, looking at themselves. And then also in the Montessori prepared bedroom, we want to make sure we have a wardrobe. At this time is when we're going to be encouraging our older children, our toddlers, to begin dressing themselves and to begin making those choices about how they want to get ready for the day. So if you're looking at that small wardrobe, you do want to make sure that the clothes included in there, if you're going to encourage your child to dress themselves, making sure that what's available is, of course, weather appropriate. When we're offering children choices, we have to be okay with the answer. So if it's the middle of winter and available in the wardrobe are shorts and tank tops, and that's what our child chooses to wear for the day, that is a self-reflection we as adults need to make on how we're preparing the space. So when looking at that wardrobe and encouraging those choices, and those don't have to be overwhelming. That there could be two choices in the clothing wardrobe, both choices that you and your family feel comfortable with for the child to be out safely, warm and healthy, but still allowing them the opportunity to have a choice and have a say in that day-to-day, just getting ready for the day. Of course, for our babies, you're going to have a changing area available in the bedroom, and what that looks like for each family will look different. Again, I do have available on YouTube. There is a Montessori baby room tour and a Montessori for toddler room tour. Now, I'm not going to play those right now because they do run about 12 to 15 minutes. I will, again, link those to the parent portal. So if you are interested, you can watch those on your own time, but it does give a more specific version of that outside of the photos that I can share with you here. In looking at the bathroom space, we are looking at preparing that for our toddlers. We want to make sure that we are looking at a standing changing area. Once your children are moving into this phase of development, you are going to want to be starting to talk about toileting, which is what we will do at the end of this presentation today. So we will talk more about standing diapering and what that looks like. But as you're preparing your Montessori home room by room, you want to make sure that you're providing space for that. It's important that your child has a low step or a learning tower if your bathroom sink is at a significant height where they wouldn't have access to it on their own. Of course, encouraging those hygiene procedures, hand washing, to be done as independently as possible. You want to make sure that you have the child's toiletries within reach. That would be their toothbrush, any brushes or combs, things like that, and making sure that those are, of course, child-sized, and offering our children a mirror at their height. It's important that we start to have them recognize some of those personal hygiene skills. Oh, I see that you have some toothpaste left on your face. Go look in the mirror and make sure that your face is clean to start your day, things like that. But we want to make sure that they have the mirror and begin starting to look at that. We'll look at that in the classroom. Even our youngest toddlers, we offer them a mirror next to the Kleenex box. So as they're beginning to learn the skills to clean their own nose, we offer them a mirror so they can see what that looks like, see how they can work through that entire process until they have completely cleaned their nose. All right, moving outside, there are, as you see, as we do every day at the Garden and Wild Hearts Nature School, we spend a great deal of our Montessori day in the outside environment. The outside environment is a prepared space for learning, just like the classroom space is. We want to make sure that we are giving opportunities for movement. Of course, most outside spaces offer that, whether that be in a playground space or just a large area that allows children to move around freely. We want to offer opportunities for gardening. That's a great practical life skill that children can work on at home. It's important that we're offering our children outside a quiet space or a soft blanket to sit on also. As I said, the outside environment can be a learning space, and that's an opportunity that we would offer inside the classroom. So we want to make sure we're offering that outdoors as well. Again, having a water source so students can look at caring for the outside environment, whether that be through plant watering, water exploration and play. A water source can be something very helpful to have in your outdoor space. Sand pits are very popular, and that can look like sand. It can look like any sort of digging space. Children really need those opportunities to explore in dirt and sand. So offering the opportunity for sand or for digging in a space outside of the garden. We do give lessons at Montessori where we're encouraging our children not to dig in the gardening space because those plants need to grow, but offering them chances for that in other places. Labyrinth can be a great opportunity for gross motor or fine motor control. We have table labyrinths or large labyrinths. If you have a space in your backyard where you can make a labyrinth, I would absolutely encourage that. What a beautiful experience for children. We want to make sure we are providing our children with baskets or jars so they can keep their nature collections. I'm sure you see your children coming home frequently with pockets full of rocks or backpacks full of pine cones. We want to make sure we're giving them a place or a way to collect those things. And of course, optionally, you could have a hut or a tunnel for children who enjoy experiences like that. And that again can be through your own observations of your children and where your children's interests lie and what you think they would enjoy more of. There's a little bit more of an outside space that is Montessori based in style. Now, I've been talking for a little while about Montessori spaces and bringing those into your home. So what I'd like to talk a little bit more about now is what benefits we can see by bringing some of those Montessori pieces into your home. A Montessori style space can offer a sense of security for the child, a sense of belonging. It encourages them to feel supported. When we're preparing an environment intentionally designed for them, we're securing those attachments that I've spent a lot of time this week in parent-child class talking about. We're also showing them that we appreciate beauty in our environment and that we are trying and striving every day to create a space that we can learn and grow in that is beautiful. And we're modeling for our children that we care for our home and for our environment, and that we are intentional behind what we're doing, and then that shows our care and appreciation for things that are beautiful and well maintained. Again, we want to make sure a place for everything and everything in its place to allow the children to continue to move through that environment, knowing how it was prepared and with that sense of security and appreciation for the intentionality and the thought that we as adults have put into that space. We also recognize that working in a Montessori style home space allows children to absorb different aspects of their culture through the cultural elements that you might be including in your prepared space that a child might not have as much access to in the classroom space. So that really is a piece of value that can be seen when you're preparing your home in this way. We want to make sure that this allows the home to become a place where the child can move from a place of dependence and independence, and then to a place of collaboration with the adult in the space, moving towards independence. We want to make sure that our children recognize that they do have an effect on the world around them, that what they do affects others. We look at that a lot as far as especially looking at eating spaces and food preparation, and then cleanup of the outdoor space. If we're leaving out materials in our outdoor space and then the dog might get them. So just looking at that cause and effect of how their day-to-day actions affect the world around them. We're also, as I've mentioned in parent-child class, we want to make sure that we're involving our child in our day-to-day activities, in our daily life, and having a Montessori style space really encourages them to do so. It's one thing to include them, say, in our daily kitchen practices as we're preparing a meal, but it opens up a whole new world of possibilities if we're inviting them to take part in that activity with tools that are child-sized. So not only are we asking them to participate in our daily lives, but to be active participants by preparing a Montessori style space for them really encourages them to be active in that, using materials that are designed specifically for them. Of course, we're looking to build concentration in our children. We're looking not to provide superfluous materials with clutter, and we are looking to design and offer more focused and fewer activities. We talked a little bit about that as far as storing and rotating the materials that you're presenting to your children. And of course, we're putting some responsibility on them for basically taking care of yourself and your environment, putting away a material once you've got it out. Some of our youngest toddlers, I'm sure you see it at home, where they're moving through their space and every basket is coming out and everything is being dumped. And that is going to happen. And it's our responsibility as adults in the space and as role models to show them how to be responsible for those things. Oh, I see that you already have the blocks out. Before we can move on to coloring, we need to make sure we put all of the blocks away. And that just comes through modeling from the adult, but having a space that's prepared in a way that models that and it encourages that absolutely helps them build those skills. All right, we're going to talk a little bit more about daily care. When looking at infants and toddlers, that daily care is a daily rhythm. And what that means through the week is predictability. Babies and toddlers have a usual cycle. For the most part, they will wake, they will feed, they will play, and they will sleep at the same times. So as parents, we want to pay attention to those signs, and we want to make sure that we're building our routine and our rhythm around them. Our toddlers, we're noticing when during those daily care times are moments of connection, whether that be during toileting practices, whether that be during personal hygiene times, whether that be during some daily care in other areas. That's our opportunity to smile, to make eye contact with our children, to share with them more about what's happening, talking through that daily care as we're doing stand-up diapering, talking through what's happening, listening as they're communicating back to us, taking turns in conversations back and forth, and then showing respectful ways to touch. Of course, any type of toileting practice or daily care practice is going to be an opportunity to have conversations about hands and ways that we respect our bodies and respect the bodies of others. When we're looking at our daily rhythm, and that obviously is going to come with a conversation of rituals. I spoke a few weeks ago in parent education class about rituals, and those rituals are created in our homes around the food we eat, around the songs we sing, the people who come over to celebrate, and the things they make, that we make. And that also includes that cultural piece I spoke about in preparing your Montessori home in a way that allows your child to learn more about your culture and the cultures of those around them. That includes talking about how your family celebrates birthdays, the different holidays or celebrations that are practiced in your home or in your family and around you, looking at different seasons. That can even be seen in annual vacations, and even in smaller pictures as far as the weekly rituals. What things happen consistently week to week. That might be going to parent-child class. That might be having school 2 days a week. So you can see those rituals in a variety of aspects of that Montessori home life. We do celebrate our birthdays at Montessori school in a special way. You see that photo here. This family is celebrating this young child's birthday in the Montessori style. I do have a YouTube link there that I will share with this presentation that will allow you to celebrate your child's birthday in a Montessori way. And I have been celebrating Montessori birthdays in the classroom for about 15 years now. So if you ever have any questions about what Montessori birthdays can look like, I would love to chat with you more about that. Okay, we're talking about physical care when we're talking about daily care. We talked briefly about clothing, offering the small wardrobe in a child's bedroom space so they can begin to practice some of the physical care that comes along with clothing. As I mentioned, these dressing opportunities are a great time for connection. You can take this time to have a conversation back and forth, making sure that as we're beginning these practices that our youngest toddlers are going to need to be slowed down and allowed a little bit more time. If there is a deadline as far as getting to school by a certain time, you're going to want to make sure that you're in tune to that as you're beginning to offer these experiences for physical care and clothing opportunities, because it does take our youngest children a little bit more time and intentionality behind that. Whereas adults are looking at a little bit more efficiency with our youngest children. We want to kind of block that efficiency out of our brain and really look at letting them do it themselves, and what types of skills they're going to be able to gain from that. Of course, we want to start, as I mentioned, by offering limited choices. So in a toddler's wardrobe, I might put 3 weather appropriate shirts and 3 weather appropriate pants. You may choose from these choices here. So it's still giving them that choice, that freedom, but there are some limits there to make sure that the children are making choices that are safe and that we're comfortable with. Even when it comes to clothing, a place for everything in its place, making sure that in that wardrobe, t-shirts have a place, shorts have a place, socks and underwear have a place. That way, as the child is doing this independently and they're going back and forth each day, they're able to find the supplies and materials that they need in the same place every day. For our babies, we want to make sure that we're giving them clothing that is easy to get over their head, natural materials, clothing that's not too tight. And it does help to have a top that is separate from the bottom. Onesies are a popular clothing choice, but do not encourage as much independence. For toddlers, we want to make sure we're giving them clothing that they can manage themselves. So when we're looking at simple fastening procedures, if you're giving a child a shirt or a pair of pants, you might want to look at the progression of first they might need to snap or button, coming followed later by zipping. I know that a lot of kids' pants will have what we call the hook and eye type of closure, and that type of closure can be difficult for our young toddlers. So we want to make sure we're looking at all of the different ways that our clothes are going to fasten, and being intentional about all of that. So next, we're going to talk a little bit more about diapering and toileting. Of course, toileting and diapering is a time for conversation and connection with our child. We want to make sure that during all of these procedures, we are showing them the utmost respect and recognizing that they understand that this is a time that they can speak up about their body and feel comfortable in saying that and sharing that. So with babies, we want to make sure that we are watching our language and our gestures. We want to even give our youngest children privacy. We want to make sure we're communicating what we are doing throughout the diapering procedure. It's important that we describe our bodily function and parts with their correct names. That is a learning opportunity for children and a way that they can describe their body in a way that allows them to stay safe and healthy. It's important that we're using gentle hands during diaper changing and try to change the diaper in the same way, in the same place as much as possible in preparation for standing up diapering as they move into toddler age. Now, for our toddlers, when we're looking at toileting, it is a scaffolded skill. So we are looking at starting with clothing. As the children are dressing and undressing themselves, they are learning those first basic skills they'll need for toileting procedures. Of course, if a child is able to remove their pants successfully and put on their pajama pants, they're going to be able to move into the bathroom and remove their pants if necessary. It's important that we include toileting as part of our daily rhythm, but we are wanting to let the child lead, following their example, making sure that we're preparing the bathroom space intentionally, but also including them in that process. Involve your child in the process of how you're setting up the bathroom, keeping it normal, not something that's outside of the normal day-to-day activity. Toileting and in and out of the bathroom is a natural process that happens frequently throughout the day, and encouraging your child to recognize that. And of course, offering them the opportunity to use the toilet very regularly. This is what a Montessori potty station might look like for a toddler who's beginning toilet learning. Now, I have some reference in this photo. There is a child toilet. Some Montessorians would say not to utilize a child toilet and encourage them to find a way to use the toilet independently. Sometimes that can be a potty seat or something like that. But I would recommend you using a system that works best for your family. So whether you use a child-sized toilet or a potty seat in the adult toilet, that's a family decision you can make. You want to make sure you have a step stool for the sink, training underwear and diapers easily available in the bathroom space, a hand towel at the child's level, wet wipes, toilet paper, and of course, a book, because as we're offering opportunities to use the toilet, some of those opportunities might be extended, and we might be looking at some possible waiting in the bathroom space. So making sure that we have activities available if we are doing some significant waiting. All right, and looking at independent toileting, we want to make sure that we are, I'm going to go to this right side here first and look at the checklist. It's important that we're looking for any physical cues that your child is ready. That might be their removing their diaper when it is soiled. That could be a conversation or some vocalization of the feelings they're feeling when they have a soiled diaper. Those would be some of the cues that we're looking for. It's important that we're using real underpants when your child is awake. Of course, sleeping practices and potty training practices do look different at night versus awake time. The potty chair, here's the note about the potty chair. I did already cover that, and trying to make real toilets as accessible as possible. Of course, if your child is in a school setting, please make sure to check with your child's teacher about what they're seeing and what cues they're seeing in the school. And because that is going to be a combined effort in order to be successful in independent toileting, it is going to be a family and school, a group effort. As we talked about with independent dressing, you're going to want to make sure as you begin independent toileting that you are ready to slow down the rest of your child's schedule. It is going to be a process, and there is going to be some extended time commitments also that you're going to be making to follow through with your child and make sure that you're giving them as many opportunities as you can. So you are going to want to take a look at your schedule. I in parent-child class had a family the other day ask me a question about toileting starting within these next couple of days. I gave a recommendation that might look different with the holiday season coming up. So making sure that if you're going to start looking at independent toileting, what might be coming up as far as your and your child's schedule that might impede or promote that readiness. That was a lot of information. It's a lot to cover Montessori in the home, room by room, and independent toileting and daily care. So I did throw a lot at you just now. And again, to reiterate, there were a variety of links and videos that I would love for you all to have access to, but rather than playing them here in this time chunk, I actually talked longer than I expected to. I will make sure that those are available on the parent portal as part of the viewing presentation. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Again, that's my contact information. Feel free to reach out to me if you don't already have that information. If any other questions come up, I'm going to go ahead and open this back up here and ask if anybody has any questions. And you can share those verbally or write them in the chat box if you would like. Caitlin, thank you for adding that. I see that chat. I think that came through when I was discussing the links that are going to be coming out. So I'm glad that you'll be able to utilize those. I'll make sure that those are there. Awesome. Thank you guys so much for commenting there in the chat box. And thank you for being the two families that joined me today. No worries, Jeremy. Thank you so much. I do see your chats here. Please share your question in the chat box. Thank you so much. Okay, working on putting things back. Sure. So if you're looking for kind of some verbiage for that, I met you guys the other day, and I absolutely, she's right at the right age where that's going to be happening. There is going to be a lot of dumping, a lot of pulling everything out at the same time. So some other methods other than just constantly modeling and repeating would be to only provide materials that you're okay with all coming out at the same time. So you might, using the classroom as an example, if the continued repetition, oh, we only get out one material at a time, let's put this away before we put this one out. You might only choose to put out materials that are limited enough in quantity that they all could come out at the same time, if that makes sense. So if I had a lot of materials all coming out at the same time and the repetition and the modeling wasn't working, I might look at choosing materials that if they were all selected at the same time could be worked with together. I also might then at that time say you had 5 materials out and the repetition and the modeling isn't working, I would drop that down to possibly 3 materials. If that still doesn't work, I might even for a day or two place one material of high interest. Of course, it would definitely be something that I have observed frequently. My child has a significant amount of interest in this. They really like to concentrate on it. But I think what I would do is I would continue to limit the materials until the practice and that routine is mastered by the child. Does that make sense? I want to ask you to repeat in the chat box, but does that make sense? Does that answer your question slightly?
Yeah, it does. I think I'm back on the microphone here. Let me know if you can't hear me, but I appreciate that. Yeah, I think it does make sense. And some of the things we're seeing, because we do have the limited amount of materials for her to have access to. I think we have like the 6 cubbyhole divider, and we only put 1 in each cubbyhole. But what we keep finding is that she takes stuff out, and then when she's not interested, she moves away, and it takes for the past month or so, 2 months, it's taken maybe 5, 6, 7, 8 times to bring her back saying, hey, you got to put this away. So I was wondering if there's anything additional that we can try out.
And I think that's, I think you guys are doing the right thing, and you're absolutely right. I think with the 6 cubby hole, that's what I expect as far as typical shelving. I might, maybe pull 2 out and see how she does with 2 or 3 out, and see how she does with 3 or 4 materials to start. And maybe you might start to see less of those reminders happening.
Okay, awesome. We'll try that. Thank you.
Of course. Thanks for your question.
Hey, Kate, I do have one question, actually, and sorry about the background noise here. In terms of making the kind of full-size toilet available, do you have any advice for like step stools? I know that I think at the garden there's like versions with handles, but it's kind of something like I don't. We've had some kind of near misses with her almost falling in. So I want to help her as much as possible as far as like turning around and kind of safely navigating.
Absolutely. That's a really good question. And yes, the stools with handles can help, but because they're the height, there still is that likelihood that there could be some toppling. I have actually heard, I have not tried it in practice, but I have heard that some of the guardrail supports that might be used for elderly people, as they're getting up and down off the toilet, I have heard that those can be implemented as kind of a guiding structure, where the child could hold on to those to then rotate around the toilet to move to a seated position, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's helpful.
So that again, that's not something I've ever done in practice, but typically when the step stool works, but the kids they climb up facing forward, but then they have to turn to seat. And that's typically where the toppling happens. It has been my experience. So I have heard that some tools that might be utilized with older citizens could be beneficial also for our youngest toileters. So you might be able to do some research into that, and then I will follow up with any additional information that I might gather.
Great, thank you.
Of course, thank you for your question.
Okay, that's all I had on my end. I just want to say thanks again. I appreciate the class.
Thank you guys so much for joining. If any, like I said, I threw a lot of information at you, and I am going to share those links. It typically takes Ellen a few days to get those uploaded. So if you don't see them right away, check back for them. But if you're reading through those links or watching those videos and any other questions arise, feel free to reach out to me by email anytime.
Awesome. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you guys so much. Enjoy your weekend.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.